Greetings, everybody. This is the 12th of April, 2025, and I am going to be doing my second or third last reading right now of my paper, Chapter 4, in this case, of Mass Child Maltreatment and the Future of Industrial Democracy. This will be on the role of political will in the crisis, and it will depend, whether it's the second or third last will depend on the length of Chapter 5, which I might take a while to get to you, because it might take a fair bit of research. So, since I've covered everything else, really, that I have to cover in my previous videos yesterday and today, let's get into it. Chapter 4: The Role of Political Will in the Crisis. No such thing as a free lunch. DCFs fail disastrously. This is Departments of Children and Families in the States. Very few of the policy recommendations outlined below have been implemented or even explored. Instead, government has largely taken a punitive role through the creation of DCF or CPS agencies, which are given the authority to suspend and enforce custody agreements without the responsibilities that licensed police have. This was justified to voters as necessary to protect children at the scale necessary to handle the crisis. However, in experience, it's been less than useless. Studies have found, in model programs no less, that children arrested by DCF agencies have worse outcomes than those who stay at home, all other things being equal. So these are including the same toxic original environments, funding, and the machinations of fiscal conservatives is not the core problem here. Again, several of these are model programs that are well funded with low caseloads. Surface level issues such as, for instance, symptoms of poverty or unclean homes are prioritized over interventions into the root problems of promiscuity and secondarily drug use that are commonly underlying these patterns. Focusing on these symptoms is inherently Sisyphean and leads to the routine use of heavy-handed measures such as family removal and ignores the problems of wealthy homes. Focusing on root problems as well as immediate needs and removing the need to present perfection, superficial perfection, I might add, could make efforts at true child welfare more successful. However, that is difficult to do with prominent leaders of the child welfare system in denial. Prominent advocates for children, such as Molly McGrath, have openly stated that the current child welfare system is simply an empty ritual, a system for guilt management. At this point in the paper, it is obvious where the shame that this system is designed to cover is coming from. The state that has taken these people into custody is the same state that was not willing to inform their parents in school and not willing to inform them when the time comes of the dangers socially and interpersonally of promiscuous sexual activity. Rarely willing to inform them about drugs, although at least they try on that. This is a state that refuses to confront its past, let alone its present, so no wonder why it is not effective. Lack of focus. One of the most difficult parts of writing this paper and about the subject academically is the lack of any historiographical term for this pattern. The only terms available have historically been terms like childhood adversity, childhood trauma, neglect, and abuse. In the later stages of writing this paper, I created the term Mass Child Maltreatment, which fits the bill a little better, but it was something that I had to coin myself. This belies the fact that this man-made pattern of family collapse, the subject of this paper, shows spatial clustering in the first world and the areas under its influence, and is clustered in time in the past 60 years and 30 years that have recently, in places that have joined more recently the global economy. This underscores the near complete lack of an organized response that has defined the period of mass child neglect. I renamed it Mass Child Maltreatment. But that was something that I didn't finish. This is a pattern that began with the panning of the Moynihan Report in 1965 and has continued through most administrations since. For instance, Republican politicians, despite using the rhetoric of family in their campaigns, have not been willing to create institutions to actually address this. Examples of such policy could include directing fine monies for family-related and sexual crimes to fund mental health care and social services for children as part of a scheme outlined in Part 5. I've been reading a little too literally today. Ezra Klein, in remarking on this, has called the Republican Party a machine for turning social resentment into tax cuts. It is difficult to deny that neoliberal policies have effects on family conditions, creating a feedback loop. Unemployment was tied to family decay as far back as the Moynihan Report itself. 67% of American families during the 2008 recession endured financial stress that was enough to damage their relationships. Well, the economy is not the only source of stress, far from it, and resiliency certainly matters. All other things being equal, economic stress almost never helps families. My experience, it doesn't, too. Anyway, lack of an effective response from the right. Social services, especially soft forms such as therapy, occupational therapy, special education, as well as sex education, have been underfunded or managed incompetently for decades in the United States. This has been justified by Republicans through demonization of the people who depend on financial handouts, for example, the welfare queen stereotype, and by a desire for small government, which has long overridden socially conservative advocacy to protect children and families. For instance, the Republican Party prefers to leave sex education to parents and pursue abstinence-only sex education, i.e. pretend that contraceptives don't exist. In my opinion, this is a cowardly stance to take, and it is a shame that Republicans have taken this stance, because social conservatives actually have a point if they would bother to make it. And ultimately, they end up with a situation where physical problems such as STD are more common, while the actual rates of sexual activity are no lower, among youth, by any measure a useless policy. I believe, by the way, that one of the reasons why this policy is so useless is because of the internet, which offers a method for this information to spread unreliably across state lines. By the way, don't try to shut down the internet. Project 2025 people, don't try. Just stop being so incompetent. Actually, I want them to be incompetent because they don't have a plan. They just want to burn everything down. Sorry for editorializing there. Even the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025, having completely turned its back on small government, handles its policies with such a degree of incompetent, all-or-nothing thinking that they would be, in practice, worse than nothing. For instance, Project 2025 attempts to ban both pornography and contraception, neglecting that contraception can be used inside committed relationships, and that from the experience of alcohol and tobacco, taxation and restorative funding is much more effective than prohibition. For, to be fair, the period described in the introduction, in which insecure attachment declined mildly among college students, did take place during the early 1980s, indicating that the social conservatism embodied by groups such as the moral majority might not have been completely useless, but in terms of comprehensive, lasting policies, it was essentially useless. Lack of an effective response from the left. While I have made most of my references to the Republican Party so far, the Democratic Party pushes so-called comprehensive sex education. It is referred to in that way because it is doubtful that just about anything discussed in this paper would be included in the discussions of comprehensive sex education. The absence of this material is both a symptom and a cause of why there has been no effort to deal with this politically. Most of the electorate simply cannot articulate that there is a problem and name it. Hence, the success of vague MAGA politics that hitches a ride on people's grievances that are vague. Research supports this observation. Voters from broken families and those with less education were more likely controlling for cross effects to vote for Trump in 2016. Sorry, I have a life. And it is demographically likely with the working class coalition. I have a life. Sorry. It is demographically likely with the working class coalition he assembled that the relationship has intensified since then. Indeed, James McIntyre wrote in a 2020 op-ed in The Nation that he would have then voted for Trump if he were voting solely based on the foster system, child welfare, and the opioid crisis. For emphasis, this op-ed was written in September 2020, after the show of force at Lafayette Square. And while he says he did not act on this instinct, it is doubtless that many of Mr. Trump's supporters did. Such has been the deafening, democracy-endangering silence of the mainstream left in confronting their incompetence on this issue and their stab at limited government. that is the end of this chapter. I might later on include a case study, which I might separately include. I might include a case study in this chapter, the text of this chapter of the paper. That I will make if I do that, I'll make a separate video reading my own personal case study, which is with the, I'm mad. I have a life. I should always turn on airplane mode when I do this. I'm sorry. If I do that, if I include my personal case study, I will put it on this. I'll put it on this channel separately, but I will get to you hopefully next week or the week after that with at least part of chapter 5, which will wrap up this paper. There's a chance that that will be 2 parts, a 2-part series. But until then, God bless you. Good luck to all of you people out there that are fighting back against Trump. And if you're here for the first time and you voted for him, I love you. I still love you. You might not have made a great decision, but I get it. And anyway, take care. We're going to need some good luck, some good providence. Goodbye.